you're talking about 9/11 with the children, and I'm talking about fear rituals in the beginning. I remember being in school and they rolled out a TV into every classroom, and we were like forced to watch it like Clockwork Orange, with our eyes open, and then we were lambasted with the images of the towers getting hit forever. It was weird. And when you're talking about, I'm imagining people hearing these coincidences, and it's obvious, it's weird. Like, you can't overlook all these coincidences. Something is weird to it. When people say, well, that just is a coincidence, it's odd. Don't you believe that people like Crowley or whomever, the occultists, whatever they are, they believe in it, right? And there's something to it. Is it like a fetish for the occultists?
It's a fetish, but I think it's part of the ritual. I mean, it's a commonly kind of said that part of it is they say what they're going to do before they do it. Kind of like, what is it, Event 201 in late 2019, where they're like, hey, what happens if there is a giant coronavirus pandemic, and then what? Oh crap, right? So they project these things. Yep. They do these drills before as kind of a way to get, as part of the preparation part. But no, a lot of it is projecting it. And I think it has to have a karmic purpose to it. And that's why, people would say, well, if they wanted to kill Trump, they would. Well, yeah, I mean, they might. That's true. But just offing him in the silence of night, it's not very effective. In fact, I would say it's more important to them, there I said them again, to have a picture of Trump's head exploding in high definition than whether he lives or dies. Right. They don't care about that. The effect of another Trump presidency for 4 years is like a blip on the radar when you're inbred and probably living for hundreds of years.
And transhumanist, you might have a neural link in your brain. You're immortal.
Right. So I think it was more important for them to try to arrange a massive ritual, occult ritual. It's a killing of the king ritual that they did with JFK.
Right.
And to have that image would have lasted 100 years. Like, it would have been so ingrained in their consciousness that they were nuts. So that was the point of that, and it didn't work. And I still, there must have been a contingency plan for that, and I think we're in it now. And I think
we're in it too. I think
a little spicy over the next couple.
I think it's almost like they don't really care about failure as the way we might think they care about failure. I think they enjoy the fact that reality keeps fracturing after every major horror event, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, and I think it's important to mention again, at least to the audience, as to why there are planned attacks like this, planned events like this.
Yeah. Foundring would probably say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the occultists or whoever it is perform these like magic mega rituals because they feed off of it for some reason, or the fear rituals feed whatever deity they want to bring out from that they believe in. Or it's a money thing. It's to break away civilizations. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, where do you land with that?
Yeah, it's a master servant kind of power play thing. It helps. It's it's like an engineering type thing where culturally we're being engineered. I think this is not coming from a black pilled way, but we're a bit of a slave race. I think in a sense that we have to be, or else we are going to be so powerful. And I think that they are jealous of.
So we have to be traumatized, which you've mentioned before, Shane, right? That's what their goal is in some way.
We're traumatized from basically birth. I mean, the whole kind of reality is a bit of trauma. I don't want to get too esoteric, but
I'm with you.
I think that it is. Yeah, it's tough because I used to come from a more atheistic viewpoint, and I get those that are just like, this is a coincidence, you're being silly, but I've done my time, in terms of all this research, and I feel like I have a pretty strong sense of when the coincidences go too far, and I do think that they are doing this stuff on purpose to make us question and make us confused, make us have infighting, make us question our own realities, make us feel depressed, make us feel like we don't have that agency.
Get us hopped up on drugs and alcohol.
Well, yeah, but right now it's that like Brave New World, right? But that's what is breaking down, in that we are now seeing that actually we do have the power to create and meme And this is very much of a meme war that is still raging on. It's a war of ideas because, like I said, we're the dreamers of dreams, right? We're the creators here, and we are now co-creating faster than they are. And so they have to do a sort of destructive, defensive type of creation. I know that's a bit of an oxymoron. But they have to destroy as their version of creating the death. And
it sounds like the cremation of care.
It's not the death that is important. It's our perception of it, right? So they can fake. These people are like, oh, these people died. These people didn't die. Well, no, it's the ritual behind it. It's like, oh, this wasn't a plane. Oh, it was. Well, no. What matters is that they say that this is plane AA11. AA is literally Crowley's magical organization. It's called the AA that Jack Parsons was in. So when they say, oh, it's AA11, and then you can look at his medal, like little talismans, and 77 was also his divine number, right? So AA77 is just everywhere, and AA77 is what hit the 77-foot tall pentagon on the which is 7 floors tall. And George Bush Sr. was 77 years old when that happened. And flying, there's that mystery plane that was flying around that they call it the Doomsday plane. Its call sign was Venus 77, right? So the 77s just start piling up, and it's like, this is Crowley's favorite number.
Okay,
and
but
then the next flight it's flight 77. And then it's flight 93, AA 93. That's what Crowley used to greet each other. So it's all of his top 3 favorite numbers again and again and again and again and again.
So these people are just perpetually worshiping Crowley. Is that what we're saying?
No. I think he's just that's a great question. I'm not trying to put him up on a pedestal. I think he's kind of low. He had a lot of influence. Look, they like to do the transsexual man and wife in terms of the people politicians and stuff, but they also like to have secret kids. So the whole Trudeau is the Fidel Castro thing, like that whole thing. It's just they do that stuff all the time. But there is evidence that Crowley might be the grandfather of George W. Bush because he was engaged in a sex magic ritual with Barbara Bush's mother in the late 20s. She went and visited. This is all documented, and she gave birth to Barbara. So this is obviously the fact checkers will re-at you hard if you mention that one, and they'll say, "Oh, it's not true because blah 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 blah." But no, it's very possible. So George W. Bush might be the grandson of the dude.
And I want to say like Crowley, I'm not seeing him as this one evil guy in charge. Kind of what we were saying earlier about every different group people blame for things, but there are ideas that he brought into the world.
He influenced a lot. He influenced Hollywood. He influenced the NASA. So a lot of the Oppenheimers, they were doing these rituals, these occult rituals before, and Jack Parsons was actually doing Crowley incantations in these places. They were doing rituals to Sirius, right? And that's a whole nother can of worms that connects with the whole Creator Earth thing.
Well, let's open up that can of worms because we're going to go from 9/11 to Creator eventually. But the Sirius, what was a Sirius connection between Crowley and Sirius?
Well, so Sirius is one of the more fundamental and most occult doctrines. Sirius is incredibly important. So if you study Freemasonry, it's the highest level. That's like they try to, the stairway that goes with the pillars, like that goes, the star is Sirius. So the star on the tarot, the Venus, right? When I said Venus 77, it's Sirius. So Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, which is important for more reasons than you might think. But there's a reason why it's used in so many of these occult things. So 9/11 had Sirius symbolism all over it, straight down to the dog that died in the building, the rescue dog. His name was Sirius, and so you see Sirius, the dog of 9/11. So all these are go to this. It's an occult thing. So.
And the Sirius was also the star, they call it the dog star, right? Isn't the dog constellation?
Right, that's right. The dog days of summer, because that's when you see, that's when the helioc, I can never pronounce that word, the heliacal rising of Sirius happens during that time. And that's where we see a lot of these rituals, right? So, and the Egyptian calendar was kind of built around about Sirius as well. So it's been part of our history for a long time. And I read and I met the guy, Robert, the guy who wrote the Sirius Mystery. Okay. He went to Africa and met the Dogon tribe there. And they were they insisted that they were visited by a race of people, aliens from Sirius. I think they called them the Numo. I can't remember. Fish-like or something. And they came and they said, "Hey, we came from Sirius." So a lot of people say, "Oh, it must be the civilization came from there." Like I said, I was been around aliens since at least the alien
That's
people
right.
since I was a kid. Maybe they're aliens. I don't know. But I never really bought. I had a hard time when it came to buying the vastness of space, and they would take metal ships, and then they were like, "Oh, it's interdimensional." I'm like, okay, I guess, but that becomes too, again, esoteric. I'd like to have a little more something that I can hold on to. So then I found Thomas Townsend Brown. Are you familiar with T.T. Brown?
No, I haven't read him.
He's kind of like the American Tesla.
Okay.
There's a reason you haven't heard of him. Also, Philo Farnsworth, who invented the television when he was a boy in the early 1900s, and the RCA tried to take that tech from him. He was another genius. He was working on fusion devices in the 60s. The whole story of television is another can of worms. But T.T. Brown in the 20s was a college student, and he started working with, he would take combine certain types of electrical outputs, jolts, and then into these magnets that he put between these dielectrics. And anyway, he noticed that he was getting some sort of gravitational effect. Now, what are we taught? The theory of gravity. Anytime they say theory, that you better watch out, because they're trying to hide the fact that they actually don't know what the heck they're talking about, right?
Yep.
So the whole theory of gravity, and then Einstein is all poppycock. I'm sorry, just throw it all out.
Yep.
I mean, sure, he got maybe some things right, but the relativity, the bending of space with large objects, it's just a bunch of.
He was just
right?
he was a Stephen Hawking that could walk.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Sham story.
So it's the Mozart conspiracy. They say, oh, there's only this one Einstein that can come every 100 years, and you're never smart, so don't try to think about it. You're just a slave, right? It's just what they do to us by propping up these famous people.
Demoralize you.
It's a psychological operation, right? And then therefore, anything that Einstein said, he's just such a smart guy. He was retarded. Like he couldn't even read until he was 8, according to his mom.
So your official story here is Einstein is also fake and gay?
Yeah, that's basically what
awesome.
I'm saying.
I'm letting go. I like that.
What I would say is gravity, the way they say is fake and gay, right?
Yep.
So they want us to think that we're in some sort of closed system where with finite resources. The idea that we could be in an open system, even financially, that's abhorrent to them. So I could mention the abiotic theory of oil, right? So they have this thing, oil is fossil fuels and it comes from dead, blah, blah, blah. And that's just total nonsense. Oil is abiotic, or at least some of it is, which is abiotic means without life. So it comes from a process that is naturally produced by the earth, and it is organically produced by the earth, and it is not dead dinosaurs, which are also fake and gay.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, I think dragons were real. I think dragons might have been real.
There you go.
But
so that's where I'm
dinosaurs.
on board with, right? But dinosaurs are super fake.
Sorry, kids.
Dragons are up here. I'm more likely.
Yeah.
So this idea that we're in this, closed system, it's all nonsense, right? But the idea that you could actually engineer gravity at a local level. So what Thomas Townsend Brown was noticing was he was getting a gravitational effect using these weird combinations of electricity and magnetism that didn't go with normal physics. So the effect was named after him, the Thomas Townsend Brown effect, I think. Or it was called, named after him and his professor that he was with at the time. Anyway, U.S. government, he started working with the government, and he took his daughter around the world, and he quit the government and started doing his own, because he noticed that the effect was different in Hawaii, so he was going on higher elevations, and he was just trying to figure this all out. So I started doing a deep dive in him, and through my research on him, I ended up connecting with his daughter, Linda Brown, who's still alive. And I met her at a secret space. They have these called secret space conferences about 10 years ago. Richard Dolan was there, Joseph Farrell, a lot of these big names. He's the breakaway civilization guy. And so I met her, and she was really excited because I'd done a lot of work on her father and stuff. And I mean, I was excited to meet her too. Yeah. So the dude was really ahead when it came to a lot of this. And the U.S. government was very interested. And like I said, it all went black around the 50s. So we've been working with this stuff and you have these guys every once in a while, like this guy, John Hutchison, I think he's from Canada, was working with this thing called the Hutchison effect, which is similar to what was observed during the Philadelphia experiment. Are you familiar with the Philadelphia experiment?
Yeah, when we tried moving the what was it, a submarine or a ship?
It was a ship, and it was, I think, of course, Einstein was involved apparently, and in 1945, I want to say, in October, it was around World War II.
Supposedly it disappeared.
We're trying to cloak it using this type of technology, and there's all sorts of old wives' tales about, it was transported, and then sailors were fused into the metal, and because they were basically, their particles were all joined and everything. So we see that this with some of the stuff that Hutchison did in the 70s that is similar to what T.T. Brown was working with, in that he's getting these weird field effects. And honestly, we notice them in hurricanes and tornadoes and other things that we think of as purely physical phenomenons, but are actually tapping in on other energies. And what happened on 9/11 that nobody knows about, there was a massive hurricane called Hurricane Erin that was hovering off the coast of New York in a way that would have set off every single alarm in any other circumstance. It was kind of like, why did CNN and the New York Times, everyone showed up at that Butler thing, and they were all live streaming, and that was the one time that they all showed up, and you're just like, wait a second. This was like the opposite thing where no one was talking about it, and it was this huge hurricane.
How far away was it? Do you know?
What?
How far off coast was it?
You could look at the weather things. I
remember it being such a beautiful day.
Like,
it's hard.
It was there, and it coming towards the land. And on 9/11, it got to its closest point, and every day after that, it moved away. So what we're talking about here is, and yes, they have the ability to steer, not necessarily engineer, which is a loaded term, but maybe influence and steer these hurricanes. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. Look, I read a book and did a lot of research on non-Madol. Non-Madol is one of those Easter Island-like things. It's an island in the middle of the Asia Ocean. Actually lines up with Easter Island in this crazy way and all these other things. But basically, it's a series. It's 1,000 miles from any other place. Series of islands, and they have these crazy structures on it that are like, this is a machine. Was a machine. Right. And it has all these tunnels that are built in between these islands, and they are filled with, they're basically water passageways, but also the carcasses of electric eels just line these tunnels. So basically, this was in a place in the ocean, in the Atlantic, or Asia, I can't remember, but where hurricanes formed. This was ground zero of where hurricanes formed. And the idea was those hurricanes were hitting the Philippines. And that is where they have these giant rice flats, which are considered to be one of those weird wonders of the world. Like, they were built by a civilization. Like, these things are massive. They're not natural. But the amount of people that it would have fed was many orders of magnitude higher than the population of the Philippines, right? It's silly to think that that was what it was for. It was actually for a larger civilization, believed to be maybe Lemuria or Mu or one of those, not the Atlantis, one of the Pacific cultures that was big, right, at the time. And so the idea was they built a hurricane mitigation machine thousands of years ago that was able to engineer these hurricanes and steer them away from their breadbasket on the Philippines.
So when you're saying engineer, when you're saying that though, I just want to be clear, like, do you think they were making them? No, you think that the hurricanes were forming and they were able to manipulate them?
It was a hurricane mitigation machine. Yes, it was a way to redirect and take away the power from, Right. So they have been doing this for a long time. It's just the technology has shifted a little bit, right? So I see a lot of people are like, well, how did the towers, they had thermite, they had the bombs in the building. No. Those, and this is the biggest cognitive dissonance, even among the people in the truth movement. You need to really look at that event with completely fresh eyes. I'm not saying there weren't bombs. I'm not saying they didn't use thermite or something similar.
Right.
there is nothing that can explain what happened to those buildings. And now you can say, oh, I saw the dust floating, I saw the debris all over the floors. Like, no. Nope. The seismic recording of those should have been so much bigger, and it should have flooded the lower Manhattan. Basically, these were collapsed in the most perfect way possible to do the least amount of damage to New York. So if I were to arrange this a certain way, I would have had them fall exactly in the order that they did, exactly in the way that they did, to have the craziest look of effect, but do the least amount of damage on what we call the bathtub,
right?
Of the
like everything there beneath it,
there was magnetic readers, especially in readings, especially in this station in Alaska, that were just off the chart. So something crazy happened, and they used, I don't know how, the tech, they used tech to tap in to that hurricane. The energy was basically redirected to pulverize, to dustify, as Judy Wood would say.
Right.
There's terms, as we have to come up with new terms. Now, there's more evidence than just that, right? You have the toasted cars, you have the people taking their shirts off as they're jumping out of the buildings, which is important. You don't do that, even in a fire, right? So these are people that were essentially being microwaved, for lack of a better term. Like, what was happening there was everything. So a lot of the beams that we saw show similar effects as this guy Hutchison, the Hutchison effect, as we call it, that we're dealing with some sort of otherworldly tech.
The Hutchison effect is where metal can disappear, right? Like he's observing some like solids disappear, right?
Things are joining metals with each other in ways that they shouldn't. But yes, that is what we're seeing: a fusing of things, a bending of things that shouldn't happen. Not, weight doesn't cause it, but mostly just what happened to all of it. It sort of just, it was gone before it even hit the ground. I mean, basically we saw, and I'm sure they use it on a smaller level, a debut of a technology, a horrific technology on a massive scale for the first time in modern history. I'm sure it's been used before a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think that anyone that was looking knew what they were seeing. And I do wonder if the Cheneys and them all who were at the level 2 were aware, or if they were in charge of that.
Do you think this is sense. Oh yeah. Do you think this is Lockheed Martin or HARP? Like,
no, I think it's bigger.
Beyond that.
I think it's beyond that. I mean, sure, I think maybe they do have it. I'm not trying to take away from the blame from these organizations who are, they're all,
it's just low level
in it, but I'm seeing that this was a interaction between the breakaway civilization and ours in a big way for the first time. And it was a way to sort of break that rift. And we joined a little bit in this weird, creepy way. Everything since World War II has been extra fake and gay. I know we keep coming back to that term, but I wrote a song about fake and gay for a reason.